Well, if I had it in the chat.
Okay.
There you
we're
go.
good. All right, call the meeting order. This is the Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Commission of August 17th, 2021 at 7:01 p.m. Roll call, we have Katie, Barry, Kevin Wilcox, Kevin Hussein, and Joy on the phone. No old business, new business, wetlands map amendment, application for Two Brothers Auto LLC. So I gotta bring in George.
Well, we need a motion to reopen that, don't we?
Just to open it. It hasn't been opened yet.
Yeah. Correct. We need a motion to open it.
So moved.
Motion by Kevin Wilcox.
Peter, I don't think you made me a co-host.
I don't know how I can do that.
Okay, so you gotta bring in George.
Attendees. Robert Arsenal, Blanchette, George Logan. Allow to talk.
Also, just a small note, it is Monday, August 16th, not the 17th,
What did I say?
17th.
George, you there? We can't see you.
I know I'm here, but I don't know why I can't see myself in my, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, for whatever reason, my, yeah, interesting. My camera is not on. Is there a little thing that you're supposed to do there?
Just your name.
Now, Peter, what you gotta do is right click on George's name and bring in video.
I got mute, remove permission to talk, hide non-video participants, and remove. So I don't know what to do.
I'm going
I
to
don't-
check my connection, make sure my camera is connected, but I think it is. So hold on.
Does everybody see mute and stop video in the lower left corner of their screens?
Yeah.
So George should have a stop video or a start video.
I just changed him to a panelist.
Right, that's what you gotta do.
Okay,
So George, you should.
and over
you just
here,
gotta-
there we go.
There you
All
are.
right.
Okay.
It was better before.
Could you bring Mr. Arsenal on? Because I think he has the wetlands amendment map for,
Okay,
that he might be able to share if someone lets him.
all right. You have to make him a panelist.
Yep. I promoted you to co-host, Alan.
Okay.
Promote
Alright.
to panelist.
All
Will be
right.
Okay,
All right.
Bob, you're muted.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't see my picture, but, oh, wait a minute, hold on, start video. There we go. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to share the amendment map so that George can reference it, if that's okay.
yep, go ahead. Ooh, that was,
Here we go.
Beautiful. All right, so I guess I could start. Again, George Logan, for the record, Reme Ecological Services, a certified soil scientist, professional wetland scientist. This is a, if I recall, a 2.31 acre parcel. It's located at 15 Highland Park Drive. You can see on your map Highland Park Drive at the bottom, Peters Road on the left, and the north arrow is pointing to the right. You see two lines on this particular map. One is in red, and that particular red line is what your currently your official wetlands map shows as being the wetland. And this was also a wetland that was investigated by Peter at some point early in the process, and he determined that there was need to delineate the wetlands in this parcel. That had not been done before. There had been another application many years ago that went through with a proposed development. This was the line that was used at that time. And so, but when Peter took his first visit, he noticed that there was a big discrepancy between what I ended up delineating, which is the blue line. If you come in a little closer, can you do that, Bob?
Yes, I can.
And you can go right. So you will see
Oh,
that
good.
my wetland boundary delineation was done in June, mid-June. I've been there a couple of times since then. And one time with Peter, and we'll explain that in a little bit. And so I started my wetland delineation apparently off-site on the Genic Realty LLC. So that's my first two flags are on their property. Obviously, those had to be taken down and not shown, as we've had experience in the past few projects that we don't want to leave hanging flags on other properties. So that's the number 383. And then my last flag during my June delineation ended just past this pipe that you see there at the bottom left corner where it says flared end. That's an inlet, which means that overflow water from the wetland complex enters that and then enters the Peters Road, apparently Peters Road system. So I had stopped at wetland 827 that you see there. But when Peter and I went out to look at the wetland together, he asked me to continue delineating sort of in a westerly direction, and that I did. And you can see that I ended up going to wetland flag A32, which is at the toe of a slope, of a fill slope that's prominent on that portion of the property. So as far as the wetlands are concerned, give you a little bit of a background. Back in sometime between 1990 and 1995, between 1986 and 1990, I should say, the industrial park was developed and Highland Park Drive went in. And a lot of activities took place at that time in the sort of the eastern portion of the site. As you can see, there's an easement that goes through the site, parallels the road for a little bit, and then hangs a right, if you will, as you're coming down. So all that is obviously within fill. And what I noticed as I'm poking around at the edge of what appeared to be the wetland is that I would say 90%, maybe I'm exaggerating, 85% of the uplands on this site are disturbed, which means they have fill or they've been disturbed through some other activity, such as developing this drainage system. And very often, especially say around flags A14 and upwards, so to my 25 or 6 and 7 and going on, all those flags are actually at the edge of the fill. So it made delineations from then on sort of easy. The difficult part was above that because it was, as you can see, very transitional. The slopes are not, the slopes are gradual. So what you have there now, as far as wetland resources are concerned, is back in the sort of the southwestern portion of the property, those are young woods, young red maple swamps. You see there that we've delineated a seasonally flooded area. I did that using the best possible aerial photography that I had that had topo on it. That was from Connecticut Eco 2016 aerial photograph and topography from the state GIS. I gave that to the surveyor, and we've kind of placed the seasonally flooded area. And Peter and I, when we looked at it, it looks like at the most, there's 10 or 11 inches of water that could at any time during the high season be there. But we did not, and I did not know it in the past, and I did not know when I was out there with Peter, any amphibian activity. So it's apparently not utilized by amphibians, at least during my site inspections. The soils here, obviously I told you that the uplands are predominantly disturbed, so those would be what we call eutherthins. And we have glacial lacustrine soils in this area, as you probably expect. We had that in the couple of properties to the north when we did that other project a few moons ago. And so there we have the very poorly drained and poorly drained Skidiko, Shaker, and Mabid soil series complex derived from glacial lacustrine soils. So those are the two soil types that I indicated on my report, which is dated June 22nd, 2021. So in this central portion of the wetland, that you can see sort of the shrub line and or tree line. They're sort of coincident. In some places it's woods, in some places it's just shrub. You see the area that's within the wetland, that's basically a wet meadow. And that's what's up against the upland for the most part. So that's what I have to give you as far as the wetland delineation and wetland map amendment information that you typically like to hear from.
Thank you. Anything else from the applicant? That's it.
That's it for this one. Yep.
Okay, Peter?
Hey, can we have Mr. Ocean unshare his screen?
Sure.
There we go. Now we have faces. I agree with what Mr. Logan said about the wetlands and our visit there together to look at the pond in particular. He said there were no amphibians there, and we did not see any or any other evidence of a vernal pool. So that's an important distinction to make. The area is definitely older disturbance from the construction of the stormwater pipes that run through there. And I think that the delineation is accurate. And I would say that we want to, if the commission approves this application, the official map will be modified, as I mentioned in my report, from that north property line. I think it was flag 3, A3, to the flag. Did we go to 27 or 28? I forget.
Started at 27, we went all the way to A32.
Okay, so at maybe at flag 31, I think is closest to our official map, but it's not very far off. So we'll be, bringing the two together at that line. There are, I forget how many exactly. There's a bunch more wetlands. I don't think George mentioned the numbers, but it may be important. George flagged about 1.2 acres of wetlands. The official map indicates about 0.89, so quite a bit more. And as I say here, he identified significantly more wetlands in the central part of the site, and less wetlands in the southern portion. So I'm in agreement with Mr. Logan's delineation. The applicant did submit the revised wetlands map amendment plan on the 13th as requested, and I believe I sent it by email to all of the commissioners.
Yep.
So I'm recommending the adoption, or rather, I'm recommending the approval of the application and adoption of the delineated wetlands to the official map. That's all for me.
Any questions from the public? You need to raise your hand. Seeing no questions from the public. Any questions from the commission?
I had a quick couple questions.
Kevin, go
I
ahead.
apologize. I'm outside. I don't know if you can hear me clearly. Peter, you were saying we're gonna close 832, the last flag, or is it 831 to the existing, the red line to close?
Yeah, you're breaking up, Kevin.
I'm sorry, you were saying you're gonna close 831, flag 831 or 832 to the wetlands that we have as the existing, correct? So we
Correct.
can-
You're breaking up again.
Yeah, someone's plugging a banjo.
Kevin, stop drinking while you're talking.
Well, let me take a video off if that's, I don't know if that's gonna help or not. Can you hear me clearly now, or is it still?
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't know if you heard me. 831 or 832 will close the proposed flag, the new flag into the old flagging line, correct?
Yes.
All right, how does the new flagging affect the easement with most of it being now in the upland review?
It doesn't affect the easement at all.
Okay,
The easement is there for the stormwater system. There's a pipe that runs through there. When Highland Park Drive was developed, they built the storm drainage system in a very peculiar way, in my opinion. The southerly end of that road drains to that system that runs through this property and discharges to a constructed stormwater detention basin on the south side of Peters Road. The storm drainage system that's in Peters Road drains to a different location altogether. So where the wetland flags line up really doesn't change the easement at all.
all right, that's all I had, so thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Any comments from the public? Any comments from the commission? Any last words from the applicant? You good, George?
I'm good, thank you.
All right. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Made by Barry,
second it.
seconded by Kevin Wilcox. Is there a motion to vote on this? Come on.
Yeah, I make a motion so we can close the wet. Can you hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
we closed the,
Public hearing is closed. We're looking for a motion to approve.
correct.
Yeah,
Well,
I'll make a motion for us to approve the application, map amendment for Two Brothers Auto LLC at 15 Highland Park Ave, lot 5007, map 378. Updated, what's the updated date you have? I have July 8 on here, but I don't see 832 on my map.
No, the revised plan is 8/13.
Correct.
813, with the revised plan map 813, as submitted to Peter.
Were there any
Second the motion.
staff recommendations? Peter?
Yes, I'm recommending the standard 3 conditions of approval, revised map, filing of the map on the land records, and making a few technical revisions.
Okay, then you'll incorporate that into your motion, Kevin?
Yes, that's fine with that amendment, friendly amendment.
And is there a second?
I seconded it.
There's also one last little adjustment to his motion. It's Highland Park Drive, not Highland Park Avenue.
Did I write Highland Park Avenue?
No, Kevin Hussein said Avenue.
Oh,
Okay.
Oh,
Highland Park Drive.
All right.
Sorry. Thanks, Kevin Wilcox.
No problem.
All right. Seconded by Barry.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, abstain, it's unanimous. Okay, moving on to item number 2, wetlands permit for Two Brothers LLC, 15 Highland Park Drive for construction of automotive repair and sales facility. Is there a motion to open a public hearing?
So moved.
Moved by Kevin Wilcox.
Second.
Seconded by Katie. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I think the second was from Barry.
Oh, Barry? Okay.
Whatever.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, so it's open. Public hearing is now open. And who is the presenter?
That would be me,
George?
Robert Arsenal. I'm the engineer for the project.
Okay,
I'd like to go ahead and share my screen again if I could.
all righty.
Alan, the applicant, Mr. Demos, is here. Do I need to make him a panelist?
Excuse me.
Robert, do we need to bring in the applicant?
Do we need to bring in the applicant?
Well, if you have questions of him.
I'm gonna promote him.
Okay,
Okay.
bring him in, yeah.
Hey, Mr. Arsenault, I believe you have the floor.
All right, thank you. George gave a pretty good explanation of the property, so you pretty much know what's going on there. I just wanted to start with a little bit of history for the project or the property. This is what was approved. Be as it may, it was a long time ago. It's back in 2005. But this showed a 21,000 square foot building with parking, etc.
Robert, is there any way we can cut right to what you're proposing for
Yeah,
this?
no, I just wanted to say this is what the applicant used when he went ahead and purchased the property.
Yeah, which isn't relevant now.
No, it's not. But now this map here is a combination map I did, which shows the wetlands. It shows the setbacks, and it shows the easement along here. What you see crosshatch in like an orange color, that's basically the only thing that's left over that's not wetlands out of the easement and behind the building lines. That's a little less than half an acre. So that's pretty much what we started with when we had to do this. But originally, when we submitted, we didn't have the new wetlands line. And the original submission here with the wetlands line, if you notice, it's got significant activity. We would end up with 6,500 square feet of disturbance because we had a 60-foot building by 150 plus parking on this end, on the southern end. And obviously that was very extreme. We felt that we were never going to get anything like that extreme proposed. So what we did, we looked at a couple of different scenarios. My first scenario was to shrink the building. I talked to the applicant and he was willing to shrink the building from 60 feet to 50 feet, which would have brought the back of the building down 10 more feet, but it still made a disturbance of somewhere between 4,500 and 5,000 square feet, which was still fairly significant. So one of the other things we looked at was the possibility of reversing the site, putting the building at this end and putting the parking at this end. It has a lot less disturbance in the wetlands, but there's a couple of reasons we chose not to go with this. as was mentioned, there's this drainage easement with a pipe, a 30-inch pipe that goes through here. The pipe is very shallow. And in order to make the drainage at the northern end of the site work here for the parking lot, this would require about 4.5 to 5 feet of fill under the entire parking lot. Plus, it would also, what you see crosshatched or shaded in orange, this would require a ZBA variance to put parking in the front yard. Otherwise, all this parking ends up in the wetlands. So it's kind of a trade-off. And when we looked at the economic prudent economic feasibility of this, it just doesn't work because of the amount of construction costs associated with the amount of fill that he would need here. Plus, the site lends itself to have the parking up in this higher area and the building down here. So we kind of discounted this one because of that. The one that we're proposing, or we would like to propose, is reducing the building to 50 feet by 150, as was mentioned, keeping the parking at this end, because the drainage here, the drainage for this easement runs in the southerly direction. So the grade of the drainage system is lower here than at the northern end. So it's a much easier connection for us to connect to this system. And it would require virtually almost no fill for the parking lot at all. And it would reduce the wetlands disturbance to 2650 total. Now, we would still require a ZBA variance for us to move this corner of the building from the 40-foot building line to create it, to make it 32 feet, just at this one corner. So this triangle in orange that you see here would require a variance. Plus this little bit of parking right here, because it goes over the building line as well. That would require, those two items would require a ZBA variance. As we threw this thing back and forth and discussed it, we know that no matter what we do now, because of the restrictions on the property, he's going to need a variance. So what we're thinking is to submit these drawings for the wetlands for your consideration, maybe at the next meeting, for a full-blown site plan with this reduced impact, and also submit an application to the ZBA for a variance at the same time for this, so that we don't, waste too much time in trying to get the thing moving for the applicant. So what we're looking for is a little bit of guidance. I know you can't, go on the record and say, yeah, if we submit this, it's going to get approved. But I know in talking to George and talking to Peter, there are mitigations that we can do to offset this develop or this intrusion into the wetlands over in this location here. There's some upland areas here, and there are other upland areas. Plus, I know George had mentioned possibly some enhancements to the wetlands. So maybe George, if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Let me just jump in here for a second.
Sure.
Peter, is this a preliminary review or is this a full-blown application?
This is a preliminary review.
It doesn't say that on the agenda item, right?
It does not, but it does say on my staff report, preliminary review.
And that's why we have no site maps?
No, we have site maps, and they submitted a full set of plans, but that was before the wetlands were reflagged.
Correct.
So those plans, which you may, I believe, have in your packet, do not show this modified building and layout. So it is a preliminary review. However, the public hearing being opened is the appropriate thing to do with, as I recommend in my staff report, the understanding that they wouldn't have fully revised site plans for tonight's meeting, that they would have them ready for the September 20th meeting.
Right.
I just want to put in one caveat. The ZBA meeting usually is the first Monday of the month, but in September, the first Monday is Labor Day. So the ZBA meeting is on the 13th.
I think it's the 12th, I think.
It's the September 12th is a Sunday. September 13th is the
I'm
Monday.
sorry, you're right, 13.
So assuming that an application is heard by the ZBA on the 12th, then I'm sorry, on the 13th, then the Wetlands Commission is meeting the next week.
Right.
So your time is short to get that ZBA application in.
Yeah, I believe we have all the materials we need to submit it, the ZB application.
Okay,
Going through the application form, basically this page here is really what they would require. They want to know, the layout, what the cause of the what's causing you to have a hardship for the variance.
yeah.
Sort of
Well,
thing.
I think you definitely have a hardship.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But this isn't the ZBA, so.
Correct. So
Okay.
basically, that's where we are. Like Peter said, we had a full set of drawings that we submitted, but most of this, what we had, can be salvaged as far as layout goes, because this parking lot is pretty much the same. The drainage, before we had a detention area, which we didn't realize we could connect to the system. So we will be connecting here, and we'll provide the proper environmental safeguards on the system itself prior to discharge and so forth. But yeah, we would like to go forward with both. We think the timing is such that it will lend itself to helping us with the application process.
So just to be clear, any comments or suggestions we give you are not permanent and don't take for fact.
Exactly.
Because
I
when we
understand.
see the final plans, we can say, no, we don't like that.
Yes, no, I totally understand.
Okay.
And if you'd like, Mr. Chairman, I can spend maybe a minute and a half giving you a little bit of potential mitigation.
Okay,
I had things that I could share, but I think in the interest of time, since it looks like we're coming in with the full boat for your next meeting, that I don't have to do that. I'll save it for then. But as you folks know, the typical situation in this town and by your commission is that if we're going to fill wetlands, even if we're along an edge of a filled wetland, say, because honestly, a lot of what you see here is uplands. If you look at the old aerial photographs, was actually wetlands. A lot of it was. But at any rate, there's not a lot of opportunity to hit your 1.5 to 1 ratio, but I'll tell you what opportunity there is. So if you see that little parking lot that's sticking out on the west and just south of the building, if you look at flag A19, so you have 18, you have 19, is a little further to the south, Bob.
Oh, yes, right here.
Right. So from above flag 19 to above flag 21, a little more than 21, if you go in there, there's an area of about 900 to 1,000 square feet in the wetland. That's a very dense patch of common reed, Phragmites. Now you say, how did that get there? This is interesting. So you remember back in 2005, there was an application that came to this commission and there was approval at that time, not using the right wetland delineation, but just what the town had on their maps. That was approved. And so sometime between 2005, 2006, the entire area that was going to be the footprint of the building and the parking lot was cleared. So they cleared the wetland. So machinery got into the wetland, and you know what happens when machinery gets into the wetland, you can bring stuff that you're not supposed to bring in. So that's when the Phragmites came in, because before that, it was sort of more of a scrub, shrub, young forest. So there's a patch there of about 900 to 1,000 square feet that can be excavated by reaching over from the edge of the fill, 40 feet, say, if you have a long boom excavator, and create an enhancement by, number one, taking out the Phragmites, and number two, creating not a wet meadow, but a shallow marsh, deep enough so that the Phragmites can't do it. And Phragmites doesn't like water that's typically more than a foot to 15 inches in depth on average. So and then of course you could plant it with good stuff. Going up from that patch up to the edge of the parking lot, not up against it, but obviously you're gonna have a slope there. But if you can imagine that 2/3 of its width could be excavated out and then carried all the way to above flag 20, between 23 and 24. And you say, well, is that woods? Well, if you look at the aerial photographs, that upland area is actually invasive autumn olive. We like that. Well, we don't like it, but we like it as far as mitigation is concerned. So if you took that area out, you probably have about 1,200 or so to 1,500 to 1,200 to 1,300 square feet of wetland that you create by taking that old fill that was placed on the wetland and redoing the wetland, basically, and planting it up into a scrub shrub and a nice wet meadow. So those are the opportunities, about 1,200 to 1,500 square feet of wetland restoration / creation, and about 900 to 1,000 feet of wetland enhancement by taking out the Phragmites. Now, there are little small patches of Phragmites here and there. I haven't really looked at those carefully, but I have time between now and then. If I see that there's another opportunity where we can reach in and do the same thing that we're doing in the big patch, then I'll include that in our mitigation plan. And then I'll probably have some other suggestions for enhancements within the wetland itself.
So normally we would, okay, so Peter, you staff report?
Yeah, Mr. Arsenal, can you unshare your screen, please?
Oh, sure.
I have, I visited the site now 3 times. And I think there's opportunity here for mitigation more on the enhancement side rather than on the creating side. However, George just pointed out that there's some options for that as well. So I think the applicant has looked at some options already, some alternatives, which is a good thing, but I think it's going to end up being mostly wetland enhancement for mitigation rather than creation, which I think is fine. It also occurred to me as I was looking at the sketch or at the alternative going, that building is, you said it was 50 by 150, I think. And you would be going for a ZBA variance for that size building. If you added another 10 feet, you would gain 1,500 more square feet of impact. You'd still be under the 5,000. So I guess my suggestion is for the applicant to go for what they need rather than what they think they can get. If you follow my reasoning. I think there's also some opportunity to perhaps move the building further to the south and impact less wetlands along the north side. But, the devil is in the details, and Mr. Arsenal is going to have to work through those details and decide how to move forward, with the whole application, particularly to ZBA. I think that's one where, there's obviously a hardship. The site has got wetlands, it's got these storm drainage easements on it, and it has 2 40-foot front yards. So it's really quite restrictive in what could be built there.
I did, just answer your question, I did look at possibly moving the building more to the south. But the problem is, if you look at that corner of the building, we're right up against the drainage easement. And I know we could put parking and so forth in the easement, but I would be hesitant to put the building in the
Yes, yes. Yeah, I didn't catch that detail. You're absolutely right. Building, no building in the easement.
Correct.
Okay. So are there any questions from the public? Okay, don't see any questions from the commission.
I do have one
There
question.
isn't from the public out there.
There is some?
It's an Andy Morrison. I will unmute him right now.
That's the wrong application, Jonathan.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
Then I'll take
Chris,
his hand down until we get to the right application.
Yeah, the hand's been up for a while.
Chris
I-
Janik.
Okay.
Hello?
Mr. Morrison, how are you?
Not bad. Yourself?
All right.
I thought I could
Hi.
get for a minute.
Okay,
We're-
you're on the next application, I believe.
Yes.
Oh.
You were brought in by mistake, so I'm gonna remove you back to the waiting room, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Stand
you.
by.
Hey, Logan, how are you?
No, you did the wrong one.
Hello,
Yes,
this is Chris. Is this the Two Brothers application?
yes, ma'am.
All right, sorry, I was at work and I just got out and I wasn't sure. So, Don is driving and so he can't be on, but one of the questions was the concern for grease, oil, etc. What was the plan for that? I didn't know if I missed that.
We're looking at a preliminary plan right now for the site development. And most likely this public hearing is going to be continued to the September 20th meeting. So
Okay, all right.
That question is relevant only to the TPC application.
Right, the wetlands, am I correct in that? Impacting, etc. also?
No,
Well, no, I guess it is a let me retract that statement. It is a wetlands concern.
Correct. And then I guess the other thing was, so we've already got a problem with the water on one side. What is the plan for the water on this side? It sounds like you're potentially moving the building closer to the 65 Highland Park, or is that, am I wrong on that as well?
the building is proposed in the north end of this property, which would be closest to 65, yes.
Okay, what's the water mitigation that we're looking at for that as well? Because again, like I said, we're seeing it on the 105. What's the plan for this one? We're gonna be surrounded by water problems. Is there a plan for that?
Actually, the, anything from the building itself, from the roof and so forth, would be considered clean water. That would be discharged to the rear.
That was what we were told for 105, and we are getting it on our property. So you can understand our concerns about getting runoff the other way.
Yeah, and this particular property it drains from north to south. So anything going off of this would end up down towards Peters Road.
Towards Peters Road.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I think that was the only two questions for now, especially if you're gonna push it off till the next month.
okay.
But the building's gonna be closer towards 65. Am I correct in this?
It's gonna be close
Like-
to the street, I believe. It's gonna be
The
close to Highland
property line
Park.
or the street? Highland Park
It's
towards the edge of the property.
actually going to be approximately 27 feet from that property line, from your property line.
But towards Highland Park Road.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, she wanted to know, if she wants to know the distance from our building to their property line. it
Yes,
would be
correct.
It'd be 27 feet.
Okay, and how
Okay.
far are you to Highland Park Road?
We're proposing, if we get the variance, we're proposing 32 feet
Okay,
to the front.
so you're
Property.
way forward from there, okay. All right, so any questions from the commission at this point, or do you want to wait till? Or do you, wait till the next meeting? Okay.
I'll wait to the next meeting, but I had a quick question. Just because I'll bring it up now and I apologize because my internet is a little choppy. On the site plan you showed, I know George was talking on, adjusting some of those flags, I think 17, 18, 19. But the parking you have right now, is that mostly just for parking for building occupancy, or is that also for the car sales part?
It's for everything to do with the business. Yeah.
Okay,
For
and
park-
that's all the parking you have right now, or can you remove 4 or 5 of those spaces and shift everything down south so you can then not be in the wetlands? Or those are the actual parking spots you need? Because if you removed about 5 of those parkings, you will be able to shift that entire site south without affecting the wetlands and keeping the building footprint.
Yeah, but we can't move the building south because of the drainage easement.
I don't have the plans in front of me, so if you,
I can share the screen again if you'd like.
no, that's fine. Okay, you're saying you looked at that alternative of moving it further south, but
Yeah.
that because of the easement and how shallow that 30-inch storm pipe is.
Yeah,
So-
it doesn't work.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so,
I do have one question.
okay,
So in the plan that you showed us, the building is going to impact 2,650 square feet of wetlands. Now, is that just the building itself, or does that take into account a buffer around the building that would also encroach on the wetlands? I'm assuming you're not going to want wetlands right up against the foundation of the building.
No, the shaded area that we show with the 2650, I like to try and be somewhat realistic with this because I know we can't, have wetlands or grade right against the building. So what I'm showing is actually based on the grading, no less than 8 feet, and I think in one corner 6 feet away from the building, but it averages out to be actually about 8 feet.
Okay, just
Mr.
curious.
Arsenault, can I ask you to put that up on the screen again so
Sure.
everybody can see?
Sure. Yeah, that's this area right here that's shaded in pink.
Yep.
If you see, it
I
goes
see.
up away from the
Yeah,
building.
yeah, right.
When I do these, I try and be somewhat realistic, You don't want to say, okay, well, we're just going to do the wetlands right up against the building. No, it never works out that way.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
while you got that up there, is there a drainage system for the parking lot?
Yes, it would be, we would be installing catch basins with pipe here. And a special structure here at this end for the removal of sands and oils and so forth prior to connection to the system.
What kind of special equipment? You gonna have a separator there, or
Yeah, basically it's a,
basically, or it is?
well, basically it's a high, high level separator in this area here.
You'll have that in details on the.
Oh,
final
yeah,
plans?
yeah.
Okay, all right. All right.
It's
All right,
it's called
so,
a storm scepter system. So,
Yeah, I have a question too. Are you planning for floor drains inside the building?
that's something that we're talking to the applicant about. If he does require any kind of, we've discussed it, if he does require any kind of grease and oil separation, he's willing to do it with facilities inside the building. He's done that before as far as grease traps, that kind of stuff. So everything would be contained in the building and that be prior to discharge.
And it would discharge to the sanitary sewer?
Yes.
now, is that regulated by deep or by the?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
They actually discourage floor drains, but if you're going to have them, you gotta have an oil water separator.
Yes, exactly.
All right, so we can table this to the next meeting?
Yep, continue the public hearing and table the application to the September 20th meeting.
Okay. Is there a motion to table this to September 20th meeting?
So moved.
Seconded.
Made by Barry, seconded by Kevin Wilcox. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? It's unanimous. Okay, so we'll see you in September.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Okay.
It'll be hard on the next guy that you're doing. That's Jim McManus, a good friend of mine. So just letting you know.
Okay. So we can, I think,
Are you gonna bring in Mr. Morrison?
yep. Okay, here we go. promote two panelists.
You're getting pretty good at this, Peter.
Yeah, hey,
Impressed.
I'm,
When he finally gets it mastered, we'll be back in the building.
yeah, I'm gonna take
Yeah.
We're never going.
Jose's
back.
job for him.
And take it easy on Peter.
Yeah,
Mr. Morrison, how are you?
wow, your picture is very dark. And you need to unmute.
Can't hear.
Here you
Okay.
go.
All right, much better.
All right, so now we need to make a motion to
Huh?
open the
Yeah.
public hearing.
You could hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
in this case, these applications are timing out. So, this is a map amendment and wetlands permit applications. And it's my recommendation that the commission open both public hearings and hear some preliminary comments from the applicant, and ask some questions if you want to, and then table them again till the September 20th meeting. But the commission has 65 days from the official receipt to open a public hearing, and tonight is the 56th day. So the public hearings, as I recommend them to be opened, and continued to the September 20th meeting. Mr. Morrison, I'm sure will have something to say, but I just want to say that the requirement to have the wetland flags re-staked by the surveyor has not been done. I spoke to Mr. Baresi today on the phone, and he said that there were site constraints for him to do that. He was not able to do that. He did assure me that he would be able to do it before the next meeting. And so, again, we have a map amendment application, and then a wetlands permit application. The commission, if you take my recommendation, should open them and then here's some preliminary discussion, comments, or presentation, and then table to the September 20th meeting. Again, the time to have these public hearings is running out. So I think it would behoove the commission to accept my recommendation. But it is, something that we've been dealing with for the last three meetings. We did not have a meeting last month, and that was because we didn't have any new applications, and at that time the flags hadn't been set. So we couldn't really have the meeting last time, just to open the public hearings and close them. I didn't think was reasonable, but tonight I think that's the way to go, so that these things don't time out, so to speak. Okay, I'll be quiet now.
Okay.
So we need to make a motion to open the, okay, so I move that we open the wetlands map amendment application of Andy Morrison, 1236 Blue Hills Avenue, lot 27A, map 236, owner Marie Dunn. Public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Joy Chance. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Okay, public hearing is now open. Now, is George Logan going to speak on behalf?
No, some guy named McManus.
No, McManus is for numbers 5
Oh.
and 6.
Oh, I thought George was passing off to him.
Yeah, no, George Logan was the soil scientist of record here. So I think, he planted the flags more than a year ago. Many of them were still not visible. Many of them were. So I've asked the applicant to have the surveyor replace the flags that are missing. not the soil.
Who's gonna speak on the applicant's behalf for the soil scientist?
Well, for the next meeting, it's gonna have to be Mr. Logan.
How about for this meeting for the map amendment?
No, I didn't ask him to make a presentation for this one. I think
Alright.
we should just
So
table it.
Can't
we're
go
just
forward
gonna
until the
open it.
flags are back.
And now
Say it
we're
again,
gonna
Barry?
table it.
I assume we can't go forward until the flags are replaced.
Correct.
So
So there's really no reason to have a discussion even about this. We should just table it now and move on to the next portion.
Correct.
All right.
So let's table it to the next meeting.
Right.
You want to make that motion, Kevin? Wilcox?
Yeah. All right. So I like to make a motion to table the wetlands map amendment application of Andy Morrison, 1236 Blue Hills Avenue, Lot 27A, map 236, owner Marie Dunn, until the next meeting, which is September 20th.
Seconded by Barry. All in favor?
I,
Opposed? Abstain? It's unanimous. Okay, is there a motion to open up wetlands permit application for Andy Morrison for 1236 Blue Hills Avenue?
All right, I'm getting used to this, so I may as well just keep going.
Hey, you're on
I'd
a
like
roll.
to
yeah, you're doing good.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to open the wetland permit application of Andy Morrison, 1236 Blue Hills Avenue, Lot 27A, map 236, for the subdivision of land with wetlands and watercourses and to construct a contractor's yard, owner Marie Dunn, for a public hearing.
Second, is there a second? Second by Joy Chance. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I,
Opposed? And abstain, so it's unanimous. So
Okay.
basically, Peter, this is the same thing. We're just opening and closing, opening and tabling.
Yeah, yes, but I would like to make a few comments, and I think Mr. Morrison would like to as well.
Okay,
This site has been pretty much operating without permits for some time. I have done other enforcement actions. An enforcement action was taken in earlier this year, and it seems that the part of the requirements of the judgment was for the applicant to obtain the necessary permits to comply with the wetlands regulations. And the applications were filed, the fees were paid earlier this year in order to accomplish that goal of becoming in compliance. But I recommend that the applicant work to achieve this compliance in a stepped process as follows. And I'm reading from my staff report, page 2 of 3. Number 1 is to restate the lost wetland flags and property corners. And I believe that's the only thing that's incomplete to have the map amendment application ready for a vote. The second step would be to remove all the imported material from the access way east of 1240 Blue Hills Avenue and in other filled wetlands or watercourses and spread the topsoil to spread topsoil and seed for stabilization. This property is shaped like a backwards C or a U, and Mr. Morrison's property, or sorry, Ms. Dunn's property, surrounds on 3 sides a lot at 1240. Their address is 1236, so this is just a little further north. And Mr. Morrison has created a rubble or stone access way that runs behind number 1240 or east of number 1240, which appears to be in the wetlands. But without the wetland flags, it's difficult to confirm that. So my recommendation is that that material be removed and that these 2 items, if these 2 items can be done by the September 20th meeting, the commission would have enough information to act on the permit application. We're working with plans that were submitted in January of 2020 that show pretty much a residential use on the south side where the house is, and the commercial use for Mr. Morrison's tree and wood operation on the north side. That north side included a building and a stormwater basin and driveways and stuff like that to accommodate the operation. But it didn't include that access way behind number 1240. So I think that's a reasonable request. And if the applicant is okay with that, then I would recommend that the commission make that a requirement, or this is what needs to be done for these to move forward. And unfortunately, if it's not done, then the commission may have no choice but to deny the applications again. And I hope that's not the case. So, Andy, what do you
Yes,
got? What do you have?
Peter, you remember when you said that there's a possibility to change a site plan to accommodate that back road? When we find out, when Mr. Logan does his research and Mr. TJ does his work, I was hoping to implement that additional drafting on the paperwork to shows that as part of the plan, because that access road does really help narrow down part of my project to be a lot more like time-wise convenient, and even not even so much convenient, more cheaper, because instead of traveling around the property to access where I need to be 2 steps down, because I have a lot of debris that I took on the property, I piled up in the back, and I would like to clean it up to create a yard space. And in order to do so, I have to be on the north side. So the north side access is easier to get to from the backyard versus coming from the backyard all the way around to the street, creating a lot more damage, I want to say tracking dirt through the other side to the street versus going from the back of the property, and I'll be there versus, like, I want to say 200 feet versus like 1,500 feet going all the way around. So time-wise, for me, it narrows down a little bit of expense for me if I could access the back way. So it'll probably be less expense for me to change the map versus going the long way.
Well, you can certainly modify your site plans, but I'm not sure you're going to be able to get them modified in time. That's what I was trying to get across with going forward with the plan as it is. Your plan had, I believe, 4,500 square feet of wetland impact, and you probably have that much or more for that access road. So it's, the permits jump from the local level to the state level once you get above 5,000 square feet. So if you want to modify the plan, I
If
think
it's going to go to the federal level, no.
yeah, but I think modifying the plan to include that back, the access way, you're going to have to lose some filled wetlands elsewhere.
And I'm agreeing on that, because there's a lot of areas I see that we're never going to use. We got 20-something acres. It wouldn't be a big deal to get rid of some to create that road. That's very important. In the long run, I will be saving a lot more money in fuel and man hours.
Okay, that meeting is 5 weeks away, and I need to have a revised set of plans in time for me to review it and to get it out to the commission. So it's really 2 or 3 weeks from today. Let's say 3 weeks from today, giving me 2 weeks before the meeting is when I would
It'll be
need
Labor Day.
plans. What's that?
3
Yeah.
weeks from today is Labor Day.
All right.
Yeah.
So the week before. You see what I'm saying, Andy, is we have a set of plans that are mostly complete. If you want to change them, then I have to go through my full review and be able to give the commission a reasonable set of recommendations. But if if you want to go that way, you will have to modify some other parts of the project elsewhere.
All right, so maybe for now, what I'll do, I'll pull the material in other place. Once it's mapped out and I can identify where we are impacting the wetland, I could temporarily move that area out of there, the crushed rocks that I have there, and use it on another part of the site until we could get the updated information at a later date.
You would be coming in for a modification to the permit if that was the case. I mean, if you certainly have the right to modify the plans that were submitted a year and a half ago, if you want to do that. If you can do that, maybe that's the best way to go, but that's something that you're going to have to talk with your surveyor and your engineer and with Mr. Logan for mitigation, about to get their input and figure out what is the best, way forward.
Well, in the meantime, Peter, my biggest concern is not to prolong this whole situation. So whatever it takes to get it pushed forward, and then we'll deal with the actual road situation at the end. If it's going to cost me more money in the end, time is money as well. So I need to think about dragging this along. It's almost 2 years, 2+ years now. We dealt with COVID a year. We're pushing way behind, and I would have wanted to be done with this.
Sure.
So I'm going to want to say we're going to push your way until we could, get the additional information to push forward the additional road.
Peter, is the Millstones still relevant as a markers?
I had asked Mr. Morrison to find or to reset the property corners that he shares with number 1240. Those are important just to, understand where the limits of the property are, but they also give you.
How about for the edge of development?
I'm sorry, say it again?
For the edge of development.
No, we don't know exactly where the property line corners are in the field, and that's part of the problem. So if they're there, we need to find them. If they're not, they need to be.
No, you're missing your point. My point is that you and I had a conversation about putting Millstones in the field so that you could tell where was the edge of development that he was allowed to go to.
Yeah, we did have that conversation. I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. I think having a physical marker in the field is a good idea.
Yeah.
But that the limits of that development are not, that would be something after the permit was approved and could be a condition of approval. Hey, you got to put these markers so we know where you are.
That way, every time there's a question, Peter doesn't have to say, well, we got to get a surveyor. Whereas if you set a Millstone at the edge of a development,
I agree.
he can see it.
Mr. Chair, through you and Peter and to Mr. Morrison, I think you need to get the get everything you need to get into us as soon as possible, or to Peter, so we can get this application hearing, so we can get to the bottom of it. I know it's been a challenging site. There's been a few violations, and we just want to make sure that our inland wetlands are in good operating shape and no one is affected. So please try our best so we can proceed with this application. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions from the public? Nope. All right. Any other questions from the commission? Any comments from the public? Any comments from the commission? So is there a motion to table this to the September 20th meeting?
I'd like to make a motion to table the public hearing. Well, is that how I want to do it? Tabling a public hearing?
Yeah.
All right, so I'd like to table the public hearing on the wetlands permit application of Andy Morrison, 1236 Blue Hills
Kevin.
Avenue.
Kevin, sorry to interrupt. You should table the application and continue the public hearing.
All right.
Correct. Sorry, Kevin.
Okay, so table the application for the wetlands permit application of Andy Morrison, 1236 Blue Hills Avenue, lot 27A, map 236, for the subdivision of land with wetlands and watercourses and to construct a contractor's yard on or done. And we will continue the public hearing
To September 20.
to September 20th.
I'll second that.
Second by Kevin Hussein. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? It's unanimous. So, Mr. Morrison, we'll see you next month.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next application, another public hearing?
Yeah, we got 2 more to go.
Whoa. Kevin Wilcox.
Oh, no, I've done enough.
Eh, Kevin,
Katie,
you
Katie looks like she's willing to do it.
can be chairman, you know.
Let me try it out.
Okay,
Make a
go for it.
motion to open a public hearing for the wetlands map amendment application of Borghese Building and Engineering, 1601 Blue Hills Avenue, lots C1 and C1A, map 453, owners New Mercies Apostolic Church, Inc.
There's a second.
Second.
Second by Barry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Unanimous. Who's here for the applicant?
It's Rob Blanchett with Borghese Building.
How are
And we're
you?
representing the applicant for actually both public hearings. And I'll try and keep it brief because I guess everybody was a little surprised by the amount you had on here tonight.
Doing okay. We got 4 of them done in an hour.
Okay.
We've
Good.
Say
been
that.
here till midnight.
Okay, I promoted Jim McManus as well, who's the soil scientist. So,
All right, how
Let's
about Stephen Harvey? Got his hand up?
okay, I don't know. Does he want to come in? Let's see. I'm not sure who Mr. Harvey is. Let's find out.
Yeah.
He's muted.
He's also one of the members of the church, or board member.
All right. Mr. Harvey, you there? You're muted.
There he goes.
Are you there, Mr. Harvey?
I see he's unmuted. He's actually the pastor for Destiny Church.
Okay.
You hear me now?
Yeah, here we go. Yes.
Okay, I was unmuted. I don't know what was going on there.
No picture, but you're unmuted.
Okay, I'll try to figure that one out now.
Click on video.
There you are.
Here I am.
Welcome. Alrighty. So, Mr. McManus, you're up.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Jim McManus, professional soil scientist, JMM Wetland Consulting Services with offices in Newtown. Back in January of 2018, I delineated the wetlands on this project site. And back just a few weeks ago on August 4th of this year, I met with Peter to review the boundary that I delineated back a few years ago. The overwhelming majority of the boundary is essentially off-site, but adjacent to the property line. There's actually 2 flags that come onto the site, and that's wetland flag 8 and 9. When I was out on the site with Peter, we did hang some flags because refresh some numbers and rehung some flags that were sort of knocked down and such. So if anybody visited the site in the last few weeks, they were at least able to see those. The wetland boundary adjacent to the site kind of follows very abrupt. It's Washbrook, but it's a man-made pond within Washbrook, and the boundary follows right along the top of the bank. with the exception of where the boundary actually extends on the site, it's actually a drainage pipe there. So the wetlands come up to the drainage pipe, turn and come right back down, following along the edge of the man-made pond within Wash Brook.
Mr. Blanchett, do we have a plan that you can share on Zoom?
I was trying to get it, I was trying to get it so I could share a screen. And the best I can do is this, and I don't know, let me see if I bring this a little closer. It might be a little, yeah, at least,
No,
can you see that a little bit better?
not really.
Rob, can you point to flags 8 and 9?
8 and 9 are right, and well, here, I'll explain it. This red line right here is the property line. This orange line is the town's wetland map. This blue line right here is the actual flagged in the field wetlands. Oops.
Sorry,
Yeah, what you're doing doesn't help, so maybe Peter can pull up it and try to follow along.
that's what I was trying to do, but I couldn't get it. Let me try again.
Yeah, for some reason, I can't get it to share my screen.
Peter, you can call it up on your screen first and then share after you've got it called up.
Okay. I'll try that. Okay, I'm working on it, folks.
Yeah, let me try it again in the meantime, Bob.
Counterclockwise. Here we go. All right. Here we go.
There we go.
Yeah, all right, perfect.
Let me zoom in a little bit and we'll get to the crux of the matter.
Right.
Oops, there we go.
So
Go ahead,
I-
Jim.
Yep, got it. Thank you. So Peter, I guess you're running the screen, right?
Yeah,
Can you point to flags 8 and 9 to give them a sense where that is? And yeah,
here's wetland flag 10.
10. There's 9 and 8,
Here's 9 right there
right?
and
8.
8,
And then 7 goes down,
right,
and then
And
6
then-
goes across.
right. So the flag wetlands line is this kind of thin line with the 2 dots.
And as
And-
you, yeah,
Go ahead, Jim.
yep. And that boundary, you see wetland flag 2 in the far left-hand side of the page. It's really following along the edge of the man-made pond within Washbrook. And I said before, it makes a lot more sense now, exception of flags 8 and 9, which it goes up and grabs a drainage pipe. And then it turns and goes back down, following along that abrupt boundary along actually, it's a forested and shrubby edge to the man-made pond. And that's really it. The majority of all of the soils in the uplands are disturbed, and the majority of the soils in the wetland part that's adjacent to the property boundaries were also disturbed. Any undisturbed soils you would fall under the Walpole, which is an outwash or glacial outwash, sort of sand and gravel sort of soil. And then as you get further in, closer to Wash Brook, you're going to find some floodplain soils, but those are all off-site. So that's pretty much it. It's a couple flags that actually hit the boundary. It's abrupt along a disturbed edge with a dense shrub and forested boundary along that wetland line. And I think I told you I went out with Peter on August 4th of this year to go over this. That's it for me now. I'm not sure if you had my January 30th, 2018 soils report. There are some photographs. There's a figure showing just an approximate location where I thought the wetlands were. And then there's some photographs. For instance, photo 3 shows the drainage pipe. Photo 1 shows actually wetland flag 6. Happens to be that one. And then there's some other stuff that's kind of off-site, and then a soils map. So that's all I have for this boundary amendment.
The commission received, or we received your report and I sent it to the commission, but it's not stapled with the agenda package. It's a separate report.
It's would be called the on-site soil investigation report. By me, it's kind of a boilerplate fill-in kind of report. It's not going to be a letter report. Fill in the blanks kind of thing.
So
If you're looking through your files.
Yes, we have it.
okay,
Here,
What, Joy?
John Panic, here.
Okay.
yeah, so I agree with what Mr. McManus stated. I went out and looked on the for the wetland flags, and it was hard for me to find it, I have to admit. So I asked him to come out to help me find these flags, and I'm going to zoom in here again because the area of flagged wetlands on the property are between wetland flag 9 and wetland flag 8. And they total about 16 square feet. I think I estimated 18. So our wetland, official wetland map line is this line here. And the official wetlands map shows 987.4 square feet. But indeed, in fact, there are only 16.2 square feet. So I met with Mr. McManus. We found remnants of some of these flags and we're able to essentially reestablish. I think we did 10 through 7 or 10 through 8.
10 to 5. Yep. 10, we actually went down to 5.
We did, okay.
Yeah.
So the outcome of this is that there are wetlands on the site, but only 16.2 square feet. I think the flagging was accurate and that, I recommending that the commission approve the application with my 3 usual conditions. You want me to try to share that report?
You can, I mean, the
Oh,
biggest thing.
I'm asking the commission, sorry.
Oh.
Jim.
No, I'm good. Does anybody
Okay.
else want to see it?
No, need it.
I'm good. All right. Any questions from the public? Any questions from the commission? The other question I have, what is that pond behind the site?
It was a man-made excavated pond within Wash Brook. I'm not sure when it was done. I'm sure it was done during all of the tobacco farming. I'm guessing they used that pond for irrigation back in the day. Yep.
Was this church previously used by somebody else?
This
Another-
church used to be in Windsor.
And
This is the one- this is the
it
one they
was a
moved?
Catholic church when it was moved from Windsor in 1935.
Okay. All right. All right. Any questions? Peter, you're good?
I'm good.
All right. No comments from the public, no comments from the commission. Let's close the public hearing.
And I move that we close the public hearing on the wetlands map amendment application of Borghese Building and Engineering, 1601 Blue Hills Avenue, lots C1 and C1A, map 453, owners New Mercies Apostolic Church, Inc.
All right, is there a second?
Second,
Second by Barry. All in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Abstain? It's unanimous. Is there a motion to approve the application?
Come on, Katie.
So move.
Like, made by Kevin Hussein. All right, you gotta be quick, Katie.
Seconded.
Second by Kevin Wilcox.
Shorthand,
All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Opposed? Abstain? It's unanimous.
All right.
All right. So who's here for the applicant?
Rob Blanchett with Borghese Building.
Wait. Do we need to open the next one, don't we?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
It's a public hearing on the development.
Right.
I'm sorry. So did we approve the application for the boundary change?
Yes, we closed the public hearing and voted to approve the application. Now we have to
The
open
wetlands.
a new public hearing.
Okay.
I don't recall.
What are you
voted to
drinking,
close?
Barry? Right, Alan?
Yeah, we voted. I don't recall voting to approve it.
No, I think we just voted to
Just
close.
voted to close the public hearing.
Yeah. Okay.
We need a motion to open the public hearing for the map.
No, we need
For
a
the
motion.
permit.
No, hold it. Stop. Alan. Kevin Hussein said that
So moved.
he was the one who was doing
Approving the
motion
amendment to the
for-
wetland, right, approving.
For approving the permit. I seconded. And then we just
Correct.
voted on it.
Well, that
Correct.
was a vote to close the public hearing. I don't-
No, we had
No, no.
already done that.
I think we,
Now-
s-
now
all
we're
right,
gonna open
whatever.
up now we're gonna move to item number 6.
The
Yes,
film will show later.
The wetlands boundary was approved.
Right.
Mr. Wilcox is right. He got it. That's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah. He keeps making these motions. He's gonna be chairman soon.
No.
So move.
Kevin, you're confusing
I'm kidding.
me.
I'm kidding.
And for the public, we have 2 Kevins, which makes it worse. So-
Yeah, not even,
Hey,
that doesn't help matters.
one of us can drop out.
No, we need you to make motions.
All right.
let's
so
have
I'd like
one to
to-
open the next public hearing.
I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing for the wetlands permit application of Borghese Building and Engineering, 1601 Blue Hills Avenue, Lot C1 and C1A, map 453, owners New Mercies Apostolic Church, to construct an addition to the existing church.
Okay,
Anybody like to second that?
yeah. Seconded by Joy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous. Public hearing is open.
Okay,
Now, who's here for the applicant?
Okay, Rob Blanchett with Borghese Building.
Right.
And what I'm gonna try and do the screen again, see if it'll come up this time. Hold on one second. It's not coming up. I don't think, well, let me see.
all right, I'm gonna try as well.
Yeah. For some reason, it's not. It won't come up.
Hey, this is a combined set that I put together and they're not in order. So I apologize for that.
Yeah, I mean, SP1 would be the one ideally, if we could get that to come up.
Yep, hang on, let me get to full picture.
Yeah, I don't know why it won't click on and come up.
Okay,
Peter,
here's
you're gonna have to change which window is being shared on your screen.
What do you
Right
mean?
now you're sharing your file explorer. So you got to change that you're sharing. You have to close that, unshare that one and then reshare the other one.
Is that better?
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
You make it a little bigger?
I can zoom in, or we can go to the SP2, which is a 20 scale instead of 30 scale. Does that help?
Yeah, that one's a little bit better.
Yeah, it's better.
So as you can see, what we're looking at doing is we're looking at adding on to the existing church, approximately 9,000 square feet. The existing church is a very small building compared to this. I mean, 9,000 square feet isn't a big building, but right there is where the existing church is. And what we're doing is building the addition out into the existing parking area. And you can kind of see in a light line, the outline of the existing parking area. And then in turn, to pick up the additional parking required for this, we're moving to, for lack of a better word, to the right side of the page there. All the drainage that's on the site now all kind of flows towards the existing church and then down towards that existing outlet, which is where the wetlands meet up with that now. We're going to basically leave that same flow with the proposed water, and that's all going to be collected, go through an oil water treatment system, and then into the detention basin. And then that detention basin is going to empty out basically to the same spot where the existing outlet is now. So there again, what we're going to do is create a better riprap system there. The one that comes out of that pipe now is really limited. It's just kind of right at the end of the pipe. So this one will create a much better area for the outlet. With the drainage calculations that we do have a zero increase runoff for the 2, 10, 25, 50, and 100-year storms. And I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. The septic system, because surprisingly enough, there is no sanitary sewer out there. So the existing building is on a well, or I mean on a septic system. This one again will also be on a septic system. We did have the perk test done. The material is, you couldn't get any better material that's out there. And that system has been designed, and that's going to be in the upper right-hand corner, well away from the wetlands area. We did receive a memo from Peter with some things, that notes that he wants us to add to the drawings, and some other things as far as notes and some improvements on the slopes and some additional landscaping that wants to be done. So there again, I mean, we really don't have any issues with what you're asking us to do. And that pretty much sums it up about what we did. I mean, like we said, there's very little wetlands on the site, so it wasn't really hard to stay out of the wetlands. And the only thing that we're going to do, which is in the wetlands in that little 16 square foot area now, is the outlet structure, and ours is going to remain in the same spot. So you can see it actually comes out near wetland flag right now, wetland flag 8. That's all going to be removed, and then that new outlet stone area will be between 8 and 9. So it will encompass the 16 square foot of wetlands.
It will not, oh, you say the riprap will?
Yeah, the only thing that's going to be in that area is going to be riprap, which is riprap is in that same area right now.
Okay.
But it'll just be an improved system of riprap, a larger area to kind of dissipate that flow.
Okay. I looked at this site in detail, and normally we get a lot of questions about wetland impacts, etc. I think you could probably do the riprap down here without impacting the wetlands at all, but that's a minor thing. For 16 square feet of wetlands down here, I don't consider that a significant impact to the wetlands. As Mr. Blanchett mentioned, whoops, it was the wrong click. The existing building is very small. It's only this little rectangle here. I'm not sure how many square feet that is, but it's a very small little church. The connecting corridor is almost as big as the existing church. So the new building is going to be, you know, I don't know, 5 times as big as the existing one. And our regulations say, you know, you're going to have, you need a permit to work within 200 feet of the water course, which is this line, and or 100 feet from the flagged wetlands, which is this line. You didn't talk about the erosion control, but this line here is silt fence. And I'm asking for, you know, some slope stabilization, some other technical revisions, including showing, you know, where soil storage might be, that kind of thing. The project is going to disturb quite a bit of soils, and I'm not sure if we got an idea or if it's on this plan what the scope of the excavation and the fill is. I believe there's more material coming out than there is going back in. And so the permit application is for the regulated activities within these upland review areas. So this part of the parking lot, this end of the stormwater basin and the septic system are not in the upland review area, but the entire building is, as well as, let's say, half the parking and most of the stormwater pond are in those upland review areas. One of my recommendations in the staff report, but I was reviewing it today and I see it wasn't included in the recommended conditions of approval, was to replant the edge right here where they're going to be closest to the pond. This dark line out here is the edge of the pond, and they're proposing to cut, I believe, all of the vegetation along this area where I'm indicating now. And my recommendation is that that this area be replanted with trees or shrubs to enhance the, you know, the existing wetlands and as a you know, an additional environmental protection. But again, I see that I didn't include it in the conditions of approval. Mr. Blanchett indicated that they were okay with that. And so it, you know, maybe doesn't need to be a condition of approval, but that's the only other thing that I was, you know, that I had in mind for this. And, you know, they do show a stormwater quality basin here or structure here. So the runoff is going to run to these catch basins into this thing and then out over here. So this discharge isn't a new discharge, but it is an 18-inch discharge pipe there. So the flows coming out of there are not very large, but I believe the size of the pipe was necessary for the volume, or I'm sorry, it was necessary to handle the volume at a pretty flat slope. I think these are all less than 1% slopes. So I think it's a reasonable application. I do have a bunch of conditions of approval, and some of them are pretty much boilerplate stuff that I always ask for. But in this case, project includes 2.4 acres of disturbance, and I'm asking for a $3,000 bond to be posted prior to construction. And I think in this case, I am also asking, among other things, for the applicant to engage and pay for an independent consultant to do weekly inspections during the project. I don't really have an idea of how long the project will take, but maybe Mr. Blanchett could fill us in on that timing wise. Do you guys have an idea of how long the project is estimated to take?
I mean, one of the things that's kind of coming into play here is, you know, in the middle of summer, we're already thinking about winter. So it's really going to depend how much work we can get done through the winter and that's going to be dependent on the weather. But we do hope to have the foundations in, the steel up. I mean, if the ground's frozen, it's really not worth, trying to do a lot of excavation. So it's really going to be dependent on that, but we should be able to have the steel up through the winter and keep on going on that. What we don't want to do if it gets incredibly cold is to be trying to tent the whole building in order to put up masonry and temporary heat. So that would drag it out a little. I mean, in an ideal world, you're probably looking at 8 or 9 months. But it's all going to be dependent on what happens in the winter.
Okay, one of my conditions, number 11, is that the stormwater basin be constructed first and stabilized. So that would be your first construction item, hopefully by before it gets too cold to plant grass.
Yep.
Is that acceptable as well?
That's acceptable.
Okay.
I mean, typically that's what we try to do anyways, is to get that being one of the first things in.
Right, you want to get it excavated and green so that it can accept water during construction too. if
Yes.
you want to do it that way.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that's condition number 11. That one is fairly boilerplate, but I'm not going to go through all 15 of them unless the commission has any questions. The applicant has indicated that he's okay with those 15, as well as planting some trees and shrubs along the, what do we have? The southwesterly part of the project, I guess? down in
Yes.
here.
Yeah, and you had that note on item 30 to us, so yeah, that's not a problem.
Yeah, okay. He's referring to technical revisions that I sent to him, I think on Thursday or Friday, which is pretty standard. We often ask for specific technical revisions to the submitted plans, and when those revisions are made, and if any revisions are occur because of the commission's vote tonight, then those would also be incorporated into final set of plans, as well as in the future, going down the line to planning and zoning. So that's, I think, pretty much what I have. I don't think anybody mentioned this, but they're proposing to move the driveway over. It's not in the upland review area, so it doesn't really come into play for this commission, but I wanted just to point that out, that it's going to shift from there to here.
Thanks, Peter. I was going to ask about that.
Okay, that's all.
That'll be a state highway problem. Not problem, but application.
Yes.
Yeah, to the DOT for the
Yep.
driveway change.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, the good thing about that road is it's so straight. You have 1,000-foot plus
Sight
Like this.
vision line down.
And there is a median up here, but it's not broken.
No, not at
You have
all.
to go down to Day Hill Road and turn around and come back.
Yeah, and from that driveway, you can actually see all the way down to the intersection at Day Hill Road.
Okay.
Right.
All right, wetlands, any questions from the public? Any questions from the commission? None.
Yeah, I actually,
Kevin is saying,
yeah, about the approved septic system location. I know it's about the wetlands review area, but obviously, Peter, I'm sure Jonathan's group has reviewed that for consistency with any failures or anything coming back into the groundwater and or wetlands, correct?
Actually, it gets reviewed by the West Hartford Bloomfield Health District, and they have been working with Borghese, with Mr. Blanchett, to design this thing so that it's properly sized and will function. Mr. Blanchett mentioned that the soils up here are real good. This part of Bloomfield has sandy soils, so they have good absorption, sometimes too much absorption, but in this case, they're working hand in hand with the health district to make sure that the septic system is done correctly. And it's going to have to be a pump system. So it's going to come out of the building to this pump chamber here and then pumped up to the leaching fields in this area.
Yeah, we do have approval already from the health department.
All right, because I probably want to, Peter, you probably want to include that in the report, because indeed, if something happens with that pump, and there is any incidents there, it will be in our upland review area and just a few feet away from, the wetlands delineation lines, I guess. So maybe we just want to include that report as part of the submission as a record.
Yeah, the septic system plan will be part of the final set, if that's what you're asking me.
Correct.
But this line here is 200 feet from the water course.
Oh, that's the 200-foot line. Okay. the one
Right.
with-
Yeah, the water course is way down here.
Okay.
Any other questions from the commission? Any comments from the public? Any comments from the commission? Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Close.
Second.
What motion? Motion made by Katie, seconded by Barry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, it's unanimous. Now, do we want to act upon this application?
I'll make a
We have to
motion.
make the motion and then we can discuss it.
Yes, this has to be a little more than make a motion. You got to include the map and staff comments and so forth.
Yeah, we'll make a motion to approve the application, the wetland permits application for Borghese Building and Engineering, 1601 Blue Hills Avenue, lots C1 and C1A, map 453, owners, the New Mercies Apostolic Church, Inc., to construct an additional existing church. I'm sorry, to construct an addition to the existing church. And with map revised, site plan revised August 9, 2021. Is that correct, Peter?
Yes,
With
Yes.
the conditions as outlined in the wetlands agent's report, in addition to add in the vegetation and the buffer, the vegetative buffer around what was the area here? The proposed,
south and west parts.
the south, that's what it was, right? The southwest corner? Yeah, southwest corner where that, trying to find a marker here, near the rear setback.
Okay. So that would be in addition
To your conditions,
to
correct?
my 3, or to my 15, pardon me. Okay, yep.
There anything else, I think?
What's the map date? Is it 8/6/21? Is that the most current map?
August 9th, 2021?
I think it was August 9.
9th.
8-9.
8/9? All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Joy. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? It's unanimous. Good luck.
Thank you.
You. Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay. Moving right along. Item number 7, 38 Pheasant Chase Road, notice of violations. Notice of violation, regulated activities without a permit. So who is here for this?
I have promoted Joshua and Melody Gaval.
Right. Now, this is not a public hearing, so there's no public comments or questions.
Right. So the back of your agenda package, you'll see a notice of violation dated August 10th. Inspection report dated August 6th. my letter of notice, warning letter dated July 9th, and an inspection report from June 25. I didn't include a staff report in this particular case because the commission really only has to decide if they want to uphold this notice of violation or rescind it. So the history is that I received some complaints from neighbors of this property, neighbors to the north. And after investigating, I found that there had been some tree clearing within wetlands and watercourses and at the edge of Mead Pond, which is on the property. And at the follow-up inspection, let me back up. I met with the property owner, Mr. Joshua Gaval, and we had a pretty long discussion about why he needed or should have had a wetlands permit, or at least a jurisdictional ruling from the commission that he didn't need a permit for clearing these upland review areas, as well as the some areas that are wetlands and watercourses. The commission should have in their package, and I can bring it up if you want me to, a GIS plot that does not have an aerial photo in the background. And it shows the site or the westerly part of the site. And it shows the areas, estimated areas of the disturbance that I noted in my first inspection. I followed Mr. Gaval around the property, and we looked at various areas, and he asked me if the trees that were behind his house, that were to the west of the house, that he was worried about falling on the house, would, if he needed a wetlands permit to take down those those trees. And my response was that if the trees are in danger of falling down, or you're worried about them falling down, then that's a legitimate reason to want to try to remove
Excuse me,
them.
Peter, you mean falling and hitting the house?
Right, exactly. So, and that he wouldn't need a wetlands permit to do though, to remove those trees. He also asked me about whether he needed a permit to pave the driveway. There's an existing driveway there that's part paved and part part gravel. So I said I wasn't sure if that was in the upland review area, but as it turns out, all but the far southwest corner of the site is either wetlands, watercourses, or in the upland review area. At my follow-up inspection, we walked around, and behind the house, not just the trees that were immediately behind the house, but all of the trees in that southwest corner, estimated about 1.3 acres of forest, were clear cut, and the area was graded to create a terrace rather than a gentle slope or moderate slope that existed before. The parts of the tree clearing and the parts of the grading closest to the house are in the 200-foot upland review area. So I told Mr. Gaval that he had another violation for doing that work without a permit, and that's when I sent the notice of violation to him. And now here we are at the meeting. I did receive written testimony from Miss Melody Gaval. I got them this morning, but they were sent to me yesterday after 7 o'clock. And I don't have the ability to share that with you guys in real time, but perhaps Ms. Gaval would like to reiterate that. If not, we can, I'll be happy to read it to you, because it's part of the motion, part of the meeting, record of the meeting. are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
You have the floor.
Oh, thank you. So,
And Joshua Gavel is here as well. So I'm taking it the committee didn't get the testimony, the written testimony. Because I think she sent it, but it went to the wrong email, so she forwarded the email right after 7. But I
Yeah,
guess
I got it, but I wasn't able to share it with the commission
okay.
before the meeting.
mhm.
Okay, so I think she will read it.
Okay,
To
so
go
I can read that over. I don't have a problem with that. So, good evening to the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission. My name is Melody Gaval, resident of 0 Gilmartin/38 Pheasant Chase. My husband Joshua Gaval and I, who have been recently married, have just become residents of Bloomfield. We moved to the Bloomfield area from different states. I'm from New York and my husband is from Massachusetts, and Connecticut was our happy medium. We're looking forward to raising our growing family and residing in the town of Bloomfield for many years to come. After we purchased the house this past year, we found there was a huge tick infestation. Anytime my husband and I were to go around the house, we would have ticks leaching onto our body. If a delivery service were to drop off a box and I were to bring it inside, there would be ticks on my body. It has come to the point where the ticks would find a way inside our house if we were to open the front door or garage doors. Every family member of ours who's walked around the property, including our nieces and nephews under the age of 5, have been bit by a tick. One of my 3-year-old nieces had a tick on her neck after visiting, and she had to go to urgent care to pull the tick's mouth out because it was stuck after the body was pulled. I plan to raise a family here, and if issued or arise during pregnancy, it could harm my growing fetus. If a tick bites and is a carrier of Lyme disease, it could put serious health complications on a person. I care about the well-being of my family and the well-being of my loved ones. We have collected these ticks and documented them just to know what species they are, because some carry Lyme disease and other serious illnesses. Amongst the ones we collected were deer ticks. Soon after that, we had the house sprayed from 2 different companies multiple times in hopes to get rid of the ticks and kill them, and the ticks have still continued to thrive and live. Everyone told us that the only way to get rid of the tick infestation was to remove the trees away from the house because they provide shade for the ticks to live and thrive in. We were informed by the CDC that ticks do not like to live in direct sunlight. When the spraying didn't work to kill the ticks, we had no choice but to call and meet with numerous tree contractors to push the trees away so we could tackle the tick infestation on our property. This wasn't our first choice because of the financial expense to remove the trees, but it was our last resort because we couldn't risk our health and our loved ones' health. After calling and meeting with 3 different professional tree contractors, we decided to go with one of the companies. Shortly after, we saw a door tag from Mr. Peter, and I'm sorry if I pronounced your last name wrong, Castaldi of Bloomfield, with a phone number. We set a meeting with him to come look at the work done on June 25th, a few days after seeing his card. He told my husband that we were not allowed to take the trees down within the wetlands perimeters and that we would have to pull a permit. We didn't know that we needed to pull a permit, otherwise we would have consulted with the town of Bloomfield. None of the professional tree contractors we met with told us that we needed to pull a permit with the town of Bloomfield or go through a special commission. They were all eager to start the job as soon as possible and get paid quickly upon completion. When my husband spoke with Mr. Castaldi about the trees, he told him he needed to stabilize by doing 2 things. One was putting seed down and the other was removing the tree trunks that were left there. Right after the meeting, we put down seed and removed the tree trunks because the health and well-being of our pond is a top priority after our health. We even took it one step further and we set up its silt tents, which was never required to do so or told to us by Mr. Castaldi. From today, grass has grown fully in both the areas next to our house and in the furthest area south side. Seeds were also put down and the chips from the trees were also placed. We have had 10 to 12 aggressive rainstorms in July, the wettest month of the whole decade, and we had no issues arise from including runoff. And it appears that since no issues have come to light, especially during the wettest month, that the land appears stabilized. During the same meeting on June 25th, my husband had many questions for Mr. Castaldi. Mr. Castaldi had the map on him and showed my husband all the waterways. He said the closest river was around the gate of the front entrance of the driveway. Joshua brought him to the walkway because we want to do new paving to the front door, and Mr. Castaldi said he would have to get back to us on the paving and that it might not be on the edge of the 200 feet setback for a wetlands violation. After that, my husband brought him to the back rear of the house to show him the trees hanging over the house. Joshua informed him that no more cutting will be done around the pond, but the rear trees of the house was our intention to take down because they were massively tall trees that were all hanging over the house. All our bedrooms, including children's bedrooms, are in the back rear of the house. Besides being a tick issue, my main concern as well was that the trees could fall down on us. A few years ago, I had a childhood friend who had a massive tree hanging over her house that fell on top of her room when she was sleeping. She was pinned to the bed by a 5,000-pound tree, severely injuring her. Her name is Stephanie Epstein, and since this incident happened, this has been a deep-rooted fear of mine. Mr. Castaldi had to go to his next meeting, but he told my husband that the rear of the house is acceptable to cut. It's not a violation because it is no further than 200 feet in his estimate. He gave Joshua the okay for the rear of the house, but not the paving to the front door until he gets back to him, because that might be close to the wetlands region. Our issue and worry were that the trees could fall down on the house, and because we got the okay to do the job, we started right after June 25th. Being that there was no violation within the 200 feet of wetlands and we got the okay, we moved forward. During the process, we wanted to address a separate issue and we leveled part of the lands because we had an issue with water in our rear basement because the land is significantly higher in the rear of the house. To combat this issue, we had set up a berm. We evenly pitched the land on one side successfully, eliminating the water issue inside the basement. We completed the rear of the house and we were totally done, besides putting down topsoil and seed. We wanted to wait until August since we heard that that was the best month to seed. During this time, when this was all completed, we received a letter in the mail on July 9th, which was out of the blue for us since my husband wasn't notified that we would be receiving anything from the Wetland Committee in the mail. We had our follow-up meeting on August 6th to show Mr. Casildi the stabilization that was requested of us. During this meeting, he told us the front/south side is stabilized. He saw the rear of our house as well with grass seed already put down and told us we violated again. This surprised us that he told us we violated and should not have done it without a permit, considering that in person on the June 25th meeting, he told my husband that the rear was not within the 200 feet of wetlands and the only thing in question was redoing the pavement leading to the front door on the side of the house. Currently, the whole top grass is coming out and the silt fence was added as well. We attached pictures of both areas to show the updated stabilization via email. Both Joshua and I are writing to you today because we were unaware that there needed to be permits pulled to remove trees within wetlands, considering professional tree companies did not tell us. We feel that the tree companies should be held liable since they are licensed and this is their field of work, especially to first-time home buyers and new residents of the area. We feel they misled us because they knew they could take advantage of us and get away with it. The house has had numerous health and safety issues that we needed to address so that we could be able to live in our home without feeling like our health and well-being is at risk daily. We were told by the previous owner's estate that he passed away at the age of 95 and he did very minimal upkeep the last decade of his life because of his old age. We weren't notified of committees, permits, and regulations. Otherwise, we would have spoken to the board about our tree concerns and all the issues the trees bring. Now that I'm aware of this, I just wanted to point out that even though wetlands are a concern for the committee, my concern was that I just wanted to feel safe living in my home and not be worried about ticks, Lyme disease, other diseases, and the possibility of massive trees that were overhanging falling down on us. This process has not been easy for either of us and has been a huge financial burden on us. I was laid off during the pandemic and we are living off a single income. I hope the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission can understand what my husband and I went through during this time and the steps we had to take to be safe in our home. Thank you for listening.
Okay. Peter, I guess I'll be the bad guy here. And thank you for your comments. But as far as the wetlands is concerned, you you encroached on areas where you shouldn't have been without permits. And to rectify that, you need, I would like to see you replant trees where you remove them. I would like to see the, I guess the soil that you brought in concerns me on where you put it and how it was placed. That may have to be removed. I'm concerned about how the cutting of the trees affected the habitat of that area. And I would want you to do a habitat study of that area. So, and all this has to be submitted to the commission for approval. Did I miss anything, Peter?
Well, I was going to say that I did receive the email, the report that was just given, along with photographs of the site that show the new areas planted that they're starting to come up green. I previously noted, and it's in my second report, that the stabilization and the removal of the tree trunks in the first area that I saw was done. That was done. And if I could, I'd like to share a screen. The only quibble that I have with what was said by Mrs. Gaval is that when at least my recollection of the discussion about trees behind or west of the house was only those trees that were in danger of falling on the house. So I prepared the map that I just brought up, and I highlighted the areas in red where I found the original areas that were noted where tree clearing had been done, right in here and right along the south side of the pond. So that's part in wetlands and part in the uplands. But the limit of the upland review area for this whole property is this line here, this purple line. And this triangle up here is the only area of the site that's not within 200 feet of the wetlands or water courses. And you can see there's a water course coming in here. There's a bigger water course coming down here. Here's a small one. Here's a small one. This is Mead Pond. It's about 1.5 acres. And the green is the wetlands, the blue are water courses. And this property has a driveway in from West Hartford, but all of the land, I believe, is in the town of Bloomfield. So on my second visit, this triangle up here is the area that was additionally cleared and graded. So this corner and this corner are in the 200-foot upland review area, 200 feet from this water course, 200 feet from this water course. So my initial recommendations for mitigation were to stabilize the area, which they did, and take the tree trunks that were here, take them away from the edge of the pond. And at that initial meeting, Mr. Gaval talked about having, or maybe it was a second meeting, I'm not sure. He was having a landscape architect come up with a plan for replanting, but I haven't seen that plan yet. So the commission has to decide whether to uphold the notice of violation or rescind it, and then we can go on.
Well, when you say go on, what do you mean by go on?
Well, if you uphold the notice of violation, then the replanting as recommended would have to be submitted for approval. And I've given or sent the Gavals an application form And I think they should submit a after the fact permit for the work that was done here and up in here. And some kind of a restoration, particularly along this part of Mead Pond. I think that's the most important part for me.
Do we know what we're dealing with for habitat? I mean,
Well, except for this corner now and around the house, this whole site is wooded uplands and wetlands. The MDC Reservoir Pond is just up here,
right.
just off site. And here's the south end of Balbray up here. There's Ms. Gaval mentioned that the town records indicate that this is 0 Gilmartin Road, but the mailing address is 38 Pheasant Chase in West Hartford. So the habitat that was here is mostly, I would say, mostly associated with the pond. And it's a man-made pond. There's a dam.
There is also a heavy bear population because they wander into Balbray from this area.
Oh, yeah, they probably wander right up and down this right of way down to Mountain Road.
Yeah, there's a heavy black bear population. But I mean, do they feed into do they drink water from that pond, from Mead Pond?
I'm sure they do, or from one of these streams. Is this stream coming in from this end is the overflow from the water treatment plant. This is not treated water. This is raw water that they're not treating. And so this pond has almost, I would say, almost continuous flow in. So it's a cold pond, I'm guessing, for swimming. But the area around it, like I said, is mostly mature woods. Again, except for these areas outlined in red now.
Yeah. You know, I know on the commission, we've discussed this a number of times where, you know, homeowners just clear cut woods without regard to wetlands or even, you know, thinking about it, or to the habitat that feed on the wetlands. And I'm really annoyed. I just wanted to say that. I don't know how y'all feel, but.
Well, I'm a resident of Gilmartin Road. Well, the neighborhood. I'm at number 25, and before the Gavals moved to 0, for the last couple of years, we've only been here 4 years, but for the last couple, we know that some new folks have moved in across the brook on the West Hartford side, and we've heard a lot of tree work being done, a lot of removal. We know that some of the trees on the Bloomfield side have been removed, and we scratched our heads and wondered, you know, why folks were doing so much clear cutting. Did they have permits? Being on wetlands, I wondered why those projects didn't come up on agendas for permits. I also wonder why licensed landscapers or tree cutting companies wouldn't inform a new resident or a new homeowner. So, you know, I scratch my head too. But I can also see, and I read it in the news too, you know, the concerns for the tick infestations. It's serious. And, you know, there'll be a balance too.
But ticks have natural predators, have, you know, frogs, birds, chickens.
Right.
I know people that buy chickens and have them walking around their yards so they can eat the ticks. You don't have to clear cut trees.
No, I know, and it's very mature forest.
Yeah, and I believe the ticks are a sign of the wildlife that's in the area.
Well,
So could I
Sure.
jump in on this conversation about ticks?
yeah,
I know a little something about ticks since I am a horticulturalist and I've been working outdoors for the last 37 years. I understand the problem with ticks. And unfortunately, they received poor information about ticks. And the people to contact would be like the State Agricultural Experiment Station. There's one in Windsor, there's one in New Haven. And
Yeah.
they would be the scientists that could tell you exactly what you need to know about either controlling ticks, living with ticks, which ones to be more concerned with. And ticks are arachnids, okay? They're cousins of spiders and scorpions. They are cool season creatures, so that if you have a warm up in January, you can expect as you walk around to pick up ticks. At the same time, their main feeding time would be, say, March through early June. Once you get into the heat of summer, and especially like July, they hide. In fact, I've actually seen them, say, in the middle of June, hiding out on foundations where it's cool in the shade by the hundreds. And if you really want to control ticks, even though it's a great idea because of your own health, or maybe say the health of the environment, to hire people who claim to do friendly controls or environmental controls or organic control, if their products aren't killing other things, they're not going to take out the ticks. So if you really want to chemically control ticks, one, it's a bad idea, because you also get rid of their predators, and you're also killing other things that you don't need to. And I do like what Alan said, get chickens, because chickens eat an awful lot of ticks and you benefit from getting eggs. Don't have roosters. And the other thing is, just because you have trees and you have shade, that does not necessarily increase the time of the year that they would be active in feeding. And like Katie, even though I'm not up on Gilmartin Road, I'm not even a quarter mile, maybe a half mile from this location, I also have ticks. And every day I have to be concerned about whether I have ticks on me. It's a matter, unfortunately, of life, and you just have to be vigilant. And you also need to understand, if you are bitten by a tick, about the last thing you want to do is grab a pair of tweezers and pull it out, because you then do two things. You push the saliva and bodily fluids of the tick into you, which also contain all the either viruses or mycoplasmas or whatever the different organelles that cause our serious diseases. That gets pushed into us. The other thing you do is you actually pull the body and separate it from the head, and the head remains, and you can get a secondary infection that way. Easiest way to get rid of them if they are biting you is to either dab them with a Q-tip with hydrogen peroxide, or put oil on the area and they start to suffocate and they back out. Or you can apply some sort of heat, take your pick as to how you want to do that without singeing yourself. And they don't like heat because they're a cool season creature, they just back out. And the one last thing I will say about, no, maybe two last things I want to say about ticks. Deer tick. Even though it's called deer tick, the main vectors for deer tick are not deer. It's mice. So what you've now done by taking down the trees is you're going to increase the amount of herbaceous plant growth, which is the food source for mice. You've now just doubled, tripled, quadrupled your mouse population, which is going to exponentially increase your tick population. The other thing is there is a new tick in the state. And if you really want to have fear about insects, diseases, and ticks, then this is one you really want to be aware of. There's a wonderful tick that's called a Lone Star tick, not because it's from Texas, because it has a single spot or star on its back, Lone Star tick. And its saliva has something in it that they have yet to identify, that if they bite us and we become infected, so to speak, by whatever it is in that saliva, it'll make us allergic to red meat. We will never, ever be able to have any kind of meat. It'll make us throw up. Once you start eating, you're going to be as sick as can be. That's all I'm going to have to say about ticks. They're a lot of fun.
Is more than enough?
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, all right, so moving along. So do we want to uphold the notice of violation and request the site plan approval?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
my recommendation was, sorry, I'm muted.
Okay, go ahead, Peter.
My recommendation was to do the stabilization, which they've done. Install erosion control measures where necessary, which I believe they've also done. And then submit for approval a replanting plan for the areas south of the pond and at the northwest watercourse, areas that were cleared, and replant the cleared areas south of the pond and at the northwest watercourse. There was in 1990 a plan that was submit, and I'm sorry, I have to say, and also submit the application for a wetlands permit. There was a planting plan prepared in 1990 for this same area, which has some pretty good trees and shrubs on it, and that could certainly be a starting point. If the Gavals do not have that plan, I have it and can share it with them with email. But yeah, I think there should also be a understanding that the next step in the process, if we don't get an application and a planting plan, is that we would go to the next step in the enforcement action, which would be a cease and desist order.
And how much time do we need to give them for coming up with this plan and taking care of these items?
Well, the next wetlands meeting is 5 weeks from tonight. That would be September 20th. I think that's enough time to submit an application and a plan. The planting of trees and shrubs might be better done in late September or October, depending on how hot our weather is, because trees and shrubs don't like to get planted in the heat. So
Careful, Peter, careful. You're crossing into my territory.
okay, I was just
You
going to
can-
say, if it, I assume that that's correct by Mr. Wilcox. You
No,
know,
but that's fine.
okay. I think it would be reasonable to expect that they could get us an application and a plant, some kind of a replanting plan for the next meeting.
Okay.
And
So now that there's a notice of violation, if they do any more cutting or violate wetlands, are they subject to fines?
only if we go to the notice of violation and the commission can recommend referring it to the town attorney
Okay.
after that.
I like to recommend $50,000 fine and be done with it, but
That's his normal figure.
that's my normal figure, but I can't have my way. All right, so is that timeline agreeable with the Gavals?
So I guess what we're asking them to do is provide a wetland permit and a replanting plan for September 20th meeting.
Correct.
Okay. And then at a later date or at the September meeting, we give them another date for the replanting
Is that correct, Peter?
and application.
Yes, I think September 20th might be too early for planting some plants, so October
15th is usually a cutoff.
Yeah, October 16th is the meeting in October. That would be
Right.
four additional weeks to do the planting. I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
Melody, is that agreeable with you?
I'm here. I'd like to just add two things and then we can, so the tick, we have not had any tick issues since the past few weeks. So absolutely no tick. So I just want to add that in there. And second, that the tree contractors can the commission hold these tree contractors liable because they're licensed contractors?
You hired them. That's
On you.
your issue.
Okay, because I come from Massachusetts and in the cities, usually if a contractor does something wrong, they could pull their license.
No, that's
Can I
your
address-
issue. You can,
Alan, can I address that just for a brief moment? So there are two different types of companies that deal with trees. One would be a licensed arborist who, yes, they cut down trees, but the reason why they are a licensed arborist is because they can apply herbicides or insecticides, and they can do pruning. But when you have a downturn in the economy, you end up with a lot of tree cutters because you don't need to be a licensed arborist to cut trees. So you can hire anybody. Doesn't matter whether they have a license, they don't have to have insurance, nothing. They can come onto your property and cut a tree. And they don't necessarily have to know anything about what they're doing except not to kill themselves, hopefully, and not to drop trees on people or animals or houses.
so
Thank you.
Joshua, when you hired this tree cutter, you checked to see if he had insurance?
Yeah, he gave me his insurance policy that he had insurance if it fell on our house and
I would contact your lawyer and go pursue him for that but we focus, this commission is focused on wetlands and uplands area. Outside of that is not our concern. I understand your family and your ticks but we're concerned about the wetlands issues. And that's where we're focused.
yeah, we want to work with the commission. So we, the environment is definitely, this is a place we're gonna call home for many more years. So we're definitely on board. And I think September 20th, we can file that permit that he's saying after the fact, and then October 15th. So that would give us more time to, because a lot of, it's just hard to get a plan because a lot of people are super busy, and I haven't got back to one guy I spoke to that was a landscape architect. So if maybe the board can refer me to local, because I've been calling out, no, they can't.
My suggestion is you go into the town hall and you can check the wetlands minutes and see who comes before the commission. Pick somebody that way if you need to. But I just want you to be clear that if you start cutting trees again or clearing or violating wetlands issues, it will not be good.
Absolutely not. We're not, nothing, everything that was done. And at this point, there will be nothing cut.
All right.
Can I just make one other point? The meeting is on the 20th of September, but I'll need the application in hand, a week or two ahead of that.
Can the town help me? Because I did get the application, but I didn't know which one I needed to fill out, which row was with this matter. So maybe there can be some,
Yeah, if you go into the wetlands department, the staff can help you fill it out.
okay.
Peter,
Yes.
Thank you very much.
all right. So do we have to vote on that, Peter? So,
Yes, you have to vote to uphold the notice of violation.
okay. Is there a motion to uphold the notice of violation?
So moved.
Made by Barry,
Second.
second by Kevin Wilcox. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain, it's unanimous. All righty. So moving on. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 5 no new applications have been received. Agenda item 6, a wetland agent permits received at 49 Alexander Road for a new deck and storage container for a auxiliary or accessory building. 440 Tungus Avenue is going to be a new house. And 701 Cottage Grove Road, they want to build a Verizon wireless hub behind the pharmacy and credit union building at 699.
Is that a tower?
No, it's not going to be a tower. They want to bring fiber optic lines in from Cottage Grove Road to a hub building, which I think is some kind of a booster. I'm not exactly sure what they do at the hub building. And then they're going to bring the fiber optic back to another pole on Cottage Grove Road. And they need some kind of physical separation between where it comes in and where it goes out, but I don't know exactly what that means. They've got some work in the upland review area, and they've submitted their permit application, I believe, for wetlands and for planning, but they haven't submitted a building permit yet.
Because I thought the state was all involved in those types.
Yeah, it's not a big enough project for it to be a siting council thing. And they are proposing to build a little building behind fence, in the back parking lot, but it's not going to be more than 10 feet high, if that.
Right.
Okay. Item 7, status of ongoing projects. I started writing them down and I got to the bottom of my page and I had to stop because there's too many to cover. So I'll do it quick. 713 Bloomfield Avenue, right across from the town hall. The apartments, they're framing the 3rd floor. So they're getting ready to close it up for the winter. At 65 Jolly Drive, which is apartments at the end of Jolly Drive, they've started their foundation and the retaining walls. At 105 Highland Park Drive, they're working on the foundation. It was my understanding from the building officials that they ran into groundwater and some buried organic material that they had to dig out. But they're moving along. These are all, by the way, these are all projects that the commission permits have been, applied for and granted. 1390 Blue Hills Avenue, which is the TJX parking lot, they're working on the pavement, so they're well along to being finished. At 151 Phoenix Crossing, the M&M trucking site is complete and was recently approved for a CO. At 21 Southwood Drive, that's the Public Works site, the site work is complete and they've recently received approval for their CO. At the Anthony's Way subdivision, all 12 houses have been done. There's road and miscellaneous plantings at the stormwater basin and a few other housekeeping items that are not complete, but that project, at least the house building part of that project is done. At
Hey, Peter?
Privilege, yes.
Just on that project, I've heard that the town owns part of the property at the very bottom near the road and is responsible for mowing it as well.
This is not correct. The town did, I'm sorry, not the town, the Wittenberry Land Trust was deeded the open space that wraps around the project. But right at the intersection with Sharon and Anthony's Way, there is a piece of property there that's owned by the homeowner at number 2 the town of
Mhm.
Bloomfield has a storm drainage easement on that piece of property that isn't being mowed. So I'm not sure how that's gonna be resolved, but town's only gonna mow it at most once a year.
Oh,
So the homeowner can certainly mow that area, but the town will do it, but only once a year.
okay.
Okay, Privilege Road, Garden Homes subdivision is still going there. 2/3 or 3/4 complete with building their duplexes. And they're expected to be completed by this time next year, all the way. 35 Douglas Street, which is the Bloomfield Tennis Club, their project for tennis courts and pickleball courts and a swimming pool is well underway. The Anna Grace School, Creek School at 129 Griffin Road North is also nearing completion, and I think they want to get students in there this fall. I don't know if they're gonna make it, but that was the original plan. And 5, 7, and 9 Tungus Avenue. Soil remediation is continuing on the backside, and Mr. Schwartz has been doing building upgrades to the old hardware store building, and they're gonna be completing that, and that's gonna become medical offices with a new parking lot where the old gas station will be a parking lot. So they're moving along too. As you can see, we have a whole lot of stuff going on. This is, between now and when the snow flies, everybody's gonna try to get all their projects done. But there may be more going on, but that was a half a page handwritten note, so I thought that would be enough. Okay,
Thank you, Peter.
any questions?
Nope.
Stuff.
Okay. Let me get my copy of the minutes. Hang on. Okay. Do we have any corrections for the minutes?
Just a couple of really minor ones on page 1, second paragraph from the bottom. Third line says the property at 1236 Blue Zero Hills Avenue. Just get rid of the zero.
You said third from the top, from the bottom?
From the bottom, from the bottom.
1, 2, 3.
2 weeks ago, it starts.
Yeah.
And then third line, there's a zero after blue.
Oh.
That's how minor that was.
Okay, yes, now I see it. It's, yeah, right. It looks like 1236, it looks like 12,360. No, I'm sorry, it looks like blue O.
Blue O, that's all.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, sorry. Next.
On page 2, 3 paragraphs up from the bottom. At the end of that paragraph, it says Mr. Geiner, period, without a
Oh,
tense. So maybe that's just hanging on.
I'll have to go back and check that, but this might be one of those ones where Jose was at the meeting and put in his 2 cents, if you will, on the whole thing. But I'll check. I'll go back through and either add that in or take out Mr. Geiner if it wasn't related.
I think all he said was he agreed with you, or he just added a little extra to it, but
That's my recollection as well, but I'll double check. Okay, next. Do you have more, Katie?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, does anybody else have any?
So is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
so moved.
Made by Kevin Wilcox, seconded by
I'll second it.
Barry. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, abstained, it's unanimous. Is that it?
Seems to be.
Other business, anything? Nope.
I do have a quick question, though.
Uh-oh.
Was I a little too much? Did I
No,
just go in depth too much? Did I hit him too hard?
no, it was in.
No, but you scared the hell out of me about ticks.
Yeah, yeah, I gotta keep
Yeah.
an eye out for that tick.
We should adjourn the meeting. We should adjourn the meeting and stop
If
the.
I can't eat red meat, I'm in serious trouble.
Here's the one thing I failed to tell you about that Lone Star tick.
Oh, God, now what?
It's
should-
the,
Hey, Alan, can we adjourn the meeting and then stop the recording?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that would be good.
I think that'd be a good
All right.
idea.
Kevin, I want to hear, so let's.
all right,
let's-
that's
A
fine.
motion made by Kevin Hussein to adjourn,
Second,
Second,
second by Joy. All in favor?
aye.
Opposed, abstained, it's unanimous.
All right, so I'm gonna push the button that says stop recording.
Yeah.
You want to stop cloud recording? Yes. Alan, were we supposed to